you know. But so because then we always have this national and international audience that wants to know what's going on in Placitas, so that's why we record. But yeah, so if you really like this reading and you want to rewatch it, it'll be on our YouTube channel along with our last 4 years of Zoom events. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, we would have never even met Sandy because of the joys of open mics and everything else. So it's kind of a, one of the blessings of the pandemic, the terrible pandemic.
Yeah.
But
The silver lining, as we say.
yeah. So we're going to start out with Mary and then followed by Sandy. And unfortunately, Hilda could not make it. She's flat on her back, but we're thinking of her. So she'll be watching the recording later. So hi, Hilda, later. So we'll start with Mary Oishi. Yes, our local Albuquerque's 5th poet laureate. She has her new book, Sidewalk Cruise Ship, from University of New Mexico Press, for part of the Albuquerque Poet Laureate. She also has, organizes one Albuquerque 100 Poets, which we've done. We did a Zoom reading on that.
And that won an award.
Yeah.
Did it win an award? Yeah. Yeah. So, as you know, Mary Oishi is a familiar figure in Albuquerque's poetry scene. I really give her credit because she was poet laureate 2020 to 2022 during the pandemic. And she came up with this brilliant idea of meeting at the libraries and having local poets read at the libraries, which is part of the anthology. So Mary's just creative and generous with her time, and getting to know her better as a friend. And it was so great when we picked Sandy up at the airport yesterday, and then we met where do we want to meet? That's kind of a funky vintage place, and then 66 Diner on Central. So when they saw each other, there's just screams and hugging and everything. And we feel like we know Sandy on Zoom, even though this is the first time we had in person. So just a little bit more about Mary, in case you didn't know this already. She's been on the radio, on air, personality, public radio for over 25 years, hosting the blues shows at 4 radio stations. She's got a lot of community work, social justice. She served as the lead facilitator for an LGBTQ youth group for 17 years, was an NGO delegate to the UN World Conference Against Racism in 2001, produced Peace Buzz, an event of art as protest in 2003, and then the Poets in the Libraries, the community outreach project of the Poet Laureate. So with no further ado, I will introduce Mary. All right.
Thank you so much. I'm honored that such an illustrious audience, my goodness.
Don't step back too far, Mary.
Okay.
Here, do you just stand where you want to stand, and then I will adjust this.
That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're good.
The profile makes my face look so flat.
Mary,
Okay.
do you mind if I just go sit in your chair now?
No, go
Just
ahead.
'cause the sun is beautiful.
Yes.
You've got the
yes.
sun's
But-
skin, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll be like,
I'll
yeah.
probably sit next to you, or I'll be wandering around taking photos.
All
All
the
right.
poems I'm reading will be from Sidewalk Cruise Ship today. I may throw in one from my collection from 2011, maybe, if I feel like it. One of the few poems I have memorized because it's very brief. Okay, so the first poem, all of these were supposed to be written from 2020 to 2022 during my laureateship. And it usually takes me about 7 years to do a book of poetry. So I was really freaking out saying, oh my goodness, how am I going to do? They wanted 100 poems submitted. And I said, I have to write 100 worthy poems in 2 years, plus do all this other stuff that I have to do. So what I did was went back through old journals and tried to find gems that I could, I mean, many of them were written during that, but not all. Basically, but they were all at least upgraded during that time. Yes. It's nice as poet laureate, you're asked to write a lot of things, right, for different events and things. But I wanted to do some things about Albuquerque because I love this city. I was telling Barbara earlier that I landed here January 3rd, 1999, and I know that because it was my birthday, but I feel like I was born again. I came here in just like, this feels like home to me, like nothing in central Pennsylvania ever did. It's like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Alabama all in the middle, and I was born in the Alabama part, and it really never felt like home to me. So this really feels like home, but I see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I love it all anyway. But this is maybe part of the ugly, or part of the thing that tugs at my heart, and that's some of the poverty and some of the just frightening things, that happen in Albuquerque as well. And I don't know how many of you remember Steve Winwood's Low Spark of High Heel Boys. Are you old enough? Okay, so I just switched that around. High Spark of Low Heeled is the name of this. There she is on the corner of Broadway and Lomas, dancing, wrapping her arms around herself, throwing them open to the sky, shouting commands to the drivers waiting for the light to change. Grand sweeping motions for them to go back to dancing, wrapping her arms around herself, throwing them open to the sky, singing out the descriptors of her jumbled world to the indifferent day. She's out of her mind, they think, a fleeting dismissal. Green light and they roll past, glad their doors auto-lock. I miss the first light. She makes no eye contact, calls instead to the drifting cloud that pays no mind on its way to the mountain. What trauma put her there, incoherent on the corner? What horrors made her hold herself abandoned, spinning out back in like that? What keeps her dancing, embracing herself and reaching, still sparking too high to step off the curb? Thank you. And this one, of course, came out of the pandemic. And this man I know, Leo, he put all these photographs on Facebook and he said, oh, I'm just so discouraged. This town reminds me of a song. This town is coming like a ghost town. So I had to write this for Leo. Ghost town. This town is coming like a ghost town was the song that kept singing in an Albuquerque adopted son's head, louder and too loud for the silence downtown as he walked deserted streets past boarded up windows. He took a few pictures, a truck turning left with no one in the sidewalk, no one in the crosswalk or the sidewalks either for that matter, except the sun with a song in his head and one unhoused man curled up in his dirty blue blanket in an alcove, his few belongings nearby, a water bottle and a backpack in the corner near his head, already half ghost. One shop owner, windows intact, has painted on them the face of George Floyd. Black Lives Matter, hashtag justice for George Floyd is the caption. It's more of a chant than a song, but yeah, I can see how your inside ears would sing, this town is coming like a ghost town. Another picture on the strip, one lone lowrider, red lights in the grill, a few blocks down a chopper, all stretched out, yellow, chrome, and attitude. Other than that, not much sign of life. Albuquerque's adopted son is feeling deep despair. I doubt he ever took the Old Town Ghost Tour back when things were open all the time. He wasn't a tourist. This is his home. Who needs a ghost tour? Ghosts in every neighborhood, hiding in the volcanoes, ghosts everywhere. In the university ghetto, an alcoholic found 3 days later in her back room dead. Now she's refusing to leave, lighting all the candles, turning on the stereo at 3 a.m. She's determined to get somebody's attention. La Llorona, you'll have to ask the ones born here about her. I can tell you since I arrived, one spirit runs down Zuni looking for an unlocked car to spend the night, looking over her shoulder for that one cop who turned off his lapel camera. Friends keep building her memorials by the wall at the trailer park near where she went down before Zuni bends back to Central. They keep building over and over, but they keep being torn down until they finally give up. This ghost not on the Old Town Ghost Tour, too far removed, nor the ghost with the black gloves, los guantes negros, holding a shovel, wishing he had answered his daughter's calls so that no wellness-turned-death call had followed. Nor is the ghost on a hill near the manicured neighbors just under the mountains, the ones with this magnificent westward views. He wasn't well. He wasn't to be reasoned with. He didn't belong there. So the cops were called. This town is coming like a ghost town. Yes, it's a ghost town. Spirits that go back more than 300 years, long before the country ever breathed its name. Didn't you see that sign on your last picture? It says, some tears become flames. Don't despair, son. That's Albuquerque talking. And she damn well knows what she's talking about. So how many people here had a mother? Okay, great. Then you'll be able to understand this. Petals and rocks. Oh, well, there you go. My daughter. Petals and rocks. Until she's blistered, until her hands bleed, a mother will pluck the flower from every stem, shake the blossoms from every blooming tree, lie down herself if that's what it takes to cushion the path her child walks. Still, they will choose to climb the rock wall. Okay, so I can't help but be political. This is called choice. Every birthing mother rides with death for a while. Some for a few minutes, some hours, some days. Some all the way past the point where they can wrap new life in their arms, leap from his chariot, or even themselves dismount alone. Who dares to force her stay aboard? No matter how child she is, how old, no matter how she got there, father, grandpa, violent stranger, even if it's guaranteed he'll drive her past the veil. Yes, this November vote. Okay, so how many people had a father? All right, good. This is called Easter morning. Told my dad some good news last night on the phone. He gave me that, hey, congratulating laugh he always does. It was so good to hear his voice and his laugh again, even if it was only in a dream. Now, there's another place that I love that is not my home, but it was my mother's ancestral home. And I revived some journal writings from that visit for this book. See, I'm giving you my secrets. Kind and distant, green and glass. Was this a dream of unfamiliar bird songs, cloud-haloed mountains, a pagoda-pierced cityscapes, pachinko and neon, 5-story TV screens, 5-way crosswalks thronging at 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon? Was it a dream of 40-foot bronze Buddhas, of fuzzy antlered buck bowing to yellow-capped school children, of Westerners waiting like hunters with cameras for geisha to emerge for a fleeting 20 seconds on a Kyoto street? Was it a dream of glimmers of great-grandparents given names, a few dates at long last? Was it a dream of artfully prepared foods, of a kind old Japanese couple, elegant and loving, hosting us in their home? Was it a dream of narrow Yamanashi alleys and bicycle bells, of sunsets on rice fields, sunsets on rivers, dotted with cranes and lovers? Was it a dream of high-speed trains with ample legroom filled with men in suits reading comic books, newspapers, and porn? Was it a dream of gourmet bento lunches in train stations, ubiquitous vending machines with peace and hope cigarettes, canned lattes, and fresh cucumbers? Was it a dream of upper middle class women and their well-groomed children wearing shirts with nonsensical English sayings? Crack! If the sky or heaven falls, we will catch the lark of twinkle stars. Lily poem, casual dog style. String along with organizer. Don't come home alone when darkening. I want to see the change in the world with this eye. English, English everywhere. Made me wonder what those kanji shirts and tattoos at home really say. $98 shirts at the mall, $23 chopsticks, curtained photo booths, packed with young girls eager to put their faces in a field of cartoon flowers or sparkling stars, then draw or write and decorate all over the shot to create stamp-sized works of pop art they will save and trade. Was this a dream of a kabuki actor in a grand white and gold kimono floating across a Tokyo stage? Of the Kodo troupe of taiko drummers and rivers of blue silk enhancing his performance? Was it a dream of a series of 9 escalators going up and up and up in a Kyoto rail station, 21st century echo of the steep 7-stone flights to enlightenment at the 8th century Minobu temple? This morning, my last morning in Japan, it feels like I am about to wake from a strange and beautiful dream, a dream from deep in my subconscious, disciplined and chaotic, ancient and high-tech, kind and distant, green and glass, mystic and corporate. Now with ancestral memory revived contemporary, I must return to my daily life in America, my mother's adopted post-war home, where she made sure life would go on just as they have done in the land she left behind, where they have outlasted every nightmare, where they have steadfastly refused to give up, just like her, just like me. So I was house sitting in Santa Fe in February of 2022, and there were troops amassed on the border of Ukraine. And I had been watching all these birds running along the roof line of the neighboring house. And that day there weren't any, and there was a little snow. So I wrote this haiku. Today, not one bird, thin snow caps on everything, the hush before war. This is also about the war in Ukraine. Of course, I didn't write anything about Gaza or anything because I handed this in May of 2022. So pre-dawn sorority. I live by myself, but not alone. Woken by a mother's wail half a world away. Her child buried in the rubble, in the well, she knows those shoes. I can't sleep. My dreams disturbed by a Mariupol grandma, troubled. Her fleeing daughter and her babies may not make it to the border. I'm troubled too. Get up and worry steep a pot of tea at 2 a.m. Sip slowly on hot tears. Keep company with my sisters. Pray that no more fall prey to brutality and madness. Pray I myself stay loving, not fall prey to hate that maddens. Slip my prayer past the missile trajectory to touch that one who's on the brink, the sister underground who tries to keep her cat and children calm while inside trembling, to shore her up from my kindred heart, to let her know I have picked up the sound waves of her suffering, to offer one small respite sipped from the quiet of my night by myself, but not alone. I have a dear friend named Janice Mirikitani. She was the Poet Laureate of San Francisco. And she and I and Tanya Kohung appeared on Cultivating Voices following the murders of the women in Atlanta. And we read poetry and we talked about the Asian American, experience, which is not a monolith by any stretch. And after that, I sent her an email and asked if I could use one of her poems at the Taos Writers Conference for a workshop on, I called it Transforming Scars to Art. It was about writing about trauma. And she said, of course, yes. And then she signed her email, I love you. And I thought that is very sweet, but so strange. Like she's never done that in all the years I've known her. And it turns out that 4 days later, she passed away. And I didn't even know she was sick. I didn't even know she passed, but Sandy told me. And I said, what? And I was just very upset. So I'd gone to Japan with this play. It was a play that a friend of mine wrote the script. And she called me and said, would you like a free trip to Japan? And I said, what, is the Pope Catholic? Of course. So anyway, part of the play were tanka that were written by Japanese Americans about the camp experience and even their experience in here before the camp. And so that introduced me to the form, but I never actually attempted to write any. But for some reason, they're great at pouring your emotions out because they were originally love songs to their lover. The next morning they would write each other a tanka. Anyhow, so I was very overcome to know that Janice was dying and didn't tell me. And so I wrote this one, my first tanka. Leaves not meant to fall before the autumn dries them, drains them of their green. Were you always golden then to have left without a word? Okay, I just have two more. This one, I don't want you to think that I'm all sadness because, well, I'll just to make sure you know this. This is a short one. I swear plenty, but I won't drop the F-bomb in my poem just to shock the stereotype of Asian women out of you. A place for sorrow. When my friend Jo goes out, she puts her sorrow in a kitchen drawer between the vegetable peeler and the spatulas and covers it with a bright red hot pad to keep it warm and comforted while she's away. Don't worry, she tells her sorrow. I'll be back to keep you company, but I can't take you with me out into the world. Not out there. I've got volunteer work to do, political causes, research at the university. While she's gone, she won't think back all those years to the night the police officer shows up at her door at midnight. She knows him, Sean. He's in her night class at the university. She's happy to see him. They don't get much company these days at any hour. Her son is never in trouble, such a good boy. She knows this must be a friendly visit while Sean is on patrol. She invites him into the living room. Is your husband here? He asks. Oh, such a gentleman, she thinks. Can you get him? Oh, he really wants to meet Bill. Okay. Drunk driver? So sorry. Your son. Gone. 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 That's what Sean comes to say at midnight? But he just graduated college. His fiance is such a lovely girl. She asks, expressionless, do you want a cup of tea? Now from the kitchen drawer, her sorrow beckons, but she gently reassures it on her way out the door. I won't leave you very long. Her psychiatrist friend says, why don't you flush it down the commode? Oh, no, she says. Then it might go bother someone else, and this is my sorrow. I've got shoulders to carry it, and I've got the perfect place to keep it while I'm gone. Jo rarely leaves the house now that she's a 80 widow. That old sorrow is getting more insistent every day. So she invites others in for tea and conversation and speaks of healthcare policy, of obscure history from her native Spain, of today's headlines, 2 police officers gunned down in the line of duty, of Gloria Steinem's refrigerator sparsed only with scotch and ice cream, of her late husband's woodcuts done in Taos where light is grand, of her poor, proud students who would never think of buying day-old bread, of Greenwich Village back when you could walk at night, of happier days when her son made that sugar bowl from 2 small jars. She recalls the hippies with a smile. Groove on it, that's what they used to say. And all the while her old companion drapes her shoulders, brooding straight at you, and you can never quite spend time with Jo alone. Thank you. And I will end with hope because I always end with hope. This is called Prophecy. A Diné poet, mother, multimedia artist told me today that according to the indigenous calendar, we're about to leave what she calls hell cycles, enter the cycle she and her people call heaven, when the Pleiades is directly overhead. It will get worse before it gets better, but by 2038, the mixed people, and look at us, we're all mixed. The mixed people will take us back to living with the earth again. So says the prophecy, she said, smiling down at her boy. So says the prophecy rebeats my weary heart, weary of the cycles of pandemic hell, of conspiracy hell, of mass shootings hell, of history erasing hell, hell after hell, but so says the prophecy. So says the prophecy carries me like a refrain, glowing, warming my winter heart, waiting for the mixed grandchild who will bring heaven to earth for me this year, no matter where the Pleiades appears on the night of her birth. Perhaps she will help take us back. Perhaps by 2038, she and all the mixed people of earth will usher in the heaven cycles. At least, so says the prophecy. Who am I to disbelieve? Thank you very much.
Feel free if you want to adjust.
Or do you want to get a drink? Is this a good time to get
You
a
want to move
drink?
that all for the sun. Let's see. Yeah, we just have to keep adjusting the solstice. So next up is, oh, and that was wonderful, Mary. It's just, thank you again. Very moving. So next up, Sandy Yannone, her beautiful book, The Glass Studio, which was her father's stained glass with Salmon Poetry, Ireland. They did a gorgeous job with this. So, and I'll let her tell you the little secret about the font on the cover. If you're well, if you want me to tell them,
You can tell.
I just like, does this look familiar? Because if you're a David Cassidy fan or the Partridge Family, this font is the same font that was used in the Partridge Family on the bus. So there you go. It's like- and Sandy even has broadside home about
Yeah, we'll get it.
David Cassidy, which she will read. So we welcome Sandy to the beautiful Placitas and the Poetry Playhouse, her Unbreakable Tour. She's been around a lot. She was in Ireland in April. You were in Oregon, right? And you were in Berkeley before here. I told her she needs one of those t-shirts with all the sayings on the back. So Sandy grew up near the edge of the Atlantic Ocean off Long Island Sound in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. And her parents' stained glass art studio and supply center was there. And we have a special connection to Old Saybrook because John was grew up in Hartford, and then their family cottage is in Niantic. So we hope to visit, or we will visit Sandy in the middle of July when we're on to his. Yeah, and his father's family ties. So we will be seeing her in, we'll say Brick or Niantic or somewhere else that way in July as well, just to hang out. So
Lobsters
Good.
galore.
So Sandy's poems and book reviews have appeared in print and digital anthologies and literary journals, including Plowshares, of course, Poetry Ireland Review, Prairie Schooner, Women's Review of Books, the Gay and Lesbian Review Worldwide. Her work has received the Academy American Poets Prize and Associated Writing Programs AWP Inter Award. She's been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net Award. She earned her BA in Writing and Literature from Wheaton College, an MFA from Emerson, and a PhD from University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where she met Hilda Ross. And I believe Sandy is also going to be reading a Hilda poem too. So many of you know Sandy for Cultivating Voices live poetry online, where she's got an amazing audience of international, intersectional, intergenerational poetry, poets groups and reading series. And then she also hosts Last Tuesdays with Sandy, a special monthly online reading event for Olympia Poetry Network subscribers, and co-hosts the West East Bicoastal Poets of the Pandemic and Beyond online reading series. And who knows what she will be doing now after her official retirement. So after living in the Pacific Northwest for over 2 decades, directing a college writing center, she now enjoys cultivating her love of poetry and all things vintage and nautical in New England. So a warm welcome to Sandy Yannone. I'll just make sure it's set up good for you.
Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna put my water down, and you
Well,
want
I'll
to take
take
that?
that
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I know what it's like the difficulty it is to do these hybrid things, right? So you've got this stage, and then you've got this stage, and it can get tricky. So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for being here. Every single one of you, I've had some kind of connection with through online. And I mean, I'm not kidding you. I have chills just thinking that now I'm here in person with each of you. And it's, oh my gosh. Yeah. So I'm going to read a poem first of Hilda's. We had the opportunity to see Hilda today, and she's doing great. She was kind of being very Hilda-ish and saying, what are you doing now? And what's next? And okay, try this and that and the other. And I was like, yeah, it's just like being back in Lincoln. It's awesome. And I say that with a little tongue in cheek, but honestly, I mean, Hilda Raz is a force of nature. She is a force of poetry. You know, she single-handedly, along with all the poets that she's connected with, she's created a generation of poets. Whether that's through Prairie Schooner or through her work as a distinguished professor at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And it's a real privilege. I'm sorry we couldn't read together. I mean, what's more thrilling than to be able for a student to read, with her beloved mentor. But I know she's here with us tonight, and she and I talked about what poem I might read tonight of hers. And when I said, this is the poem I'd like to read, she kind of cackled and screamed a little bit. She was really happy that I chose this poem. So this is a poem from her 2020 collection, List and Story. And she was able to, she's come on Cultivating Voices and read this, and in the West East. I try to, I try to put her front and center whenever I'm able. And this is a poem called Women in Poetry. And it begins with an epigraph from Sigrid Nunez, from Sigrid's book, The Friend. Among all my desires at the time, one of the strongest was to put my full trust in someone, in some man. Women in poetry. They want to be told what's what by a man. Women at the north end of the table nodding together. One so newly married, she writes as if the poem is her writing hand, lonely for the ring. I wanted to be told what's lovely by a man, as I was by my famous teacher who taught women, especially the beauty seated on his right to incite riot. Her pain seemed an ars poetica. Her poem's all naked body, enticingly sensual, flushed in sun and shower, come from the pool in stanza 1 to become in stanza 2 an erect and threatening penis in a changing room shared by a man and a girl. Was she the child, we wondered? What difference to the poem? In my class, we sat together in a darkening room, late afternoon. I am trying to love poetry as a stay against confusion. Flesh for now a stay against death. As lightning, incipient storm with its casual gods breaks closer to morning. And now I write alone in the kitchen with only that growl to push me. No man's voice here, no transformation, only poetry. Well, I don't think I can read after that, so I'll sit down. But all things truthful. Hilda Rest changed my life, and my poems wouldn't be what they are without her and the number of mentors that I've been so blessed to encounter. And my latest mentors are all the people that come on to Cultivating Voices, live poetry, and read. I feel like it's been an entirely new MFA that I've had the past 4 years. So just you're here in this audience. So I want to thank you genuinely from my heart for everything that you all brought to my life and to my education of poetry and enhanced my love of poetry. And before I even read another poem, I will say that New Mexico poets are probably the largest contingency of US poets in our group. I mean, you really, really show up and have made your presence known. And it just seems whenever we're doing a special event, we always have to have someone from New Mexico. It would be blasphemy if we didn't. It would be disrespectful. It would not represent what poetry is in the United States. So keep writing your miraculous poems, and thank you. And to read with Mary, let's just give Mary another round of applause. And I wanted to say to you that, becoming your friend has been one of the greatest joys of my life. And I first met Mary because we did our Laureate Love Fest in 2021 in February. Ted Kuzer participated virtually because he had surgery and it was difficult. He didn't want to be on camera. He was modest. But we had a most amazing event in 2021. And John and Jules were the one that suggested. I did not know Mary, and said, oh, you're gonna love Mary Oishi. She's been appointed Poet Laureate of Albuquerque. And Mary just came on and shone like nothing else. And Mary, you also shared about for me, the most moving program that we've ever done on Cultivating Voices, the one that I'm the proudest of is that 2022 program with you and Tanya and Janice, and then our follow-up tribute, of course, to Janice that we did this year. So I just, thank you. I love you. And it's amazing to be in your presence, to hear your poems, and congratulations on your new book and everything that's to come. So, all right. Well, a little bit of from the glass studio now. I love the sun behind me. I hope it's okay for everybody. The glass studio is basically a tribute to my father, my paternal grandmother as well. You'll hear a little bit about that. Every single poem in the book has the word glass in it. It's a meditation on glass. And it basically is about the resiliency and the fragility of glass, used as both literal and as metaphor. The book is not all about stained glass. You'll see the prismatic ways it gets used through some of these poems. And it's in 4 sections, and there's 4 title poems. I'll share 2 title poems with you tonight. And this is the first poem from the first section, called The Flaw. The heart is the fragile part that allows things to break, which is theft, which is loss, pain in expectation of pain, daughters and sons of stars and inquiry. Lights drape the sky like a necklace that history so cleverly wants to hide, because I understand how the thief picked the lock, because the glass knife is no ordinary key. Well, Mary has a book called Rock, Paper, Scissors. It's in that room, in the playhouse, the amazing playhouse. And every time I want to read this poem for you, even though it's not written for you, but because every time I think of this poem, because of my poem's called Rock, Scissors, Paper, I always think of Mary's book, Rock, Paper, Scissors. So this is Rock, Scissors, Paper, the anniversary edition, September 11th, 2020. So our first September 11th in the pandemic. On the day that the planes torpedoed the sky and ash ticker taped the city until someone identified those zombied alive as inhaling the remains of the pulverized dead. On this anniversary of that day, fire plagues the West on top of a plague. Is today the apocalypse we always dream of never arriving? My father, betrayed by his own brain, thinks so. Earlier this morning, once again on a cell phone, he names everything madness, as he's managed to do for months, the dementia scaling his brain's walls like floodwaters, and he's the most lucid of anybody I know. The sun, a round creamsicle lozenge, I would pull down from the sky and swallow, if not for knowing how it would burn, setting inside my throat and rendering me speechless. And if not September, I believe I was witness to an afternoon's delight of winter, the sky a light flowering of snow. Is this how the first blizzard recorded snuck up on us? That Crayola sun beckoning me to come play outside until I was drenched in hypothermic chill? Is this how water invites one to drown? The trickster apocalypse, playing everyone for the fool, says so. Says, don't believe in anyone you cannot taste. And so I'm left to remember her salt, her sweet, like how I remember the mist before a downpour, her hair's 5-alarm deluge all around me, my ability to see reduced to an afterthought of grace. This is how horror attends the masquerade ball, dressed as bliss, and why I returned to her week after weakening week as she became perfectly round, an undiscovered planet, and a blown glass float all at the same unapproving time. And this sun now, a blazed gumdrop behind a curtain of September's snow-crusted trees glows strangest as night prepares to arrive, wearing no mask of snowflakes, no delusions of oncoming stars. Thank you. Well, it's Pride, everyone. It's, happy Pride. Yeah, it's been an amazing month to be on tour, of course, because everywhere I go, it's Pride and we're reading Pride, it's so, but this is a poem that I wish I'd never had to write, but it seems so important every Pride month and many months that aren't Pride to read this poem, to remember those who were killed by gunfire in Orlando, Florida. So this is called Requiem for Orlando, and I always like to give a bit of a content notice with some of my poems. The Cultivating Voices live poetry audiences have been really encouraging me to do that. So I just let you know that we're going to be in the nightclub, and if that's something that you're not wanting to engage with, this is a way for you to just go walk in the lab and then or something. Yeah. So this is a sestina, and I wanted to give a big plug for our sestina workshop coming up this Saturday right here at the Playhouse. Still 4 seats left. So if you want to join Jules and myself in creating that amazing circus that is called the Sestina, please do join us or talk to us after the reading. We'll be happy to share that with you. This is Requiem for Orlando, for those departed and surviving in Orlando and everywhere. I am struggling now to comprehend my pulse, how I still have one. After all the opportunities I've had to die with my hands at the wheel, after too many drinks in bars, as I waited to become my uncloseted self. And now I have nothing to do but pulse with crackling rage as I raise an empty glass, mourning the fact that you, Orlando, lost so many hearts and hips and hands, all wanting to give themselves over to the other hearts, beating like hell on the dance floor before the clock strikes 1. You, alive, you, raising your luminous drinks to the glassy air. You, raising your brown Orlando hands to the heavens in the heat of your last dance at Pulse. And of course, you don't know this. Don't know that death waits around the corner like a drunk in a car. You are just waiting for last call, for your early morning heart to drum faster, to keep perfect time with its perfect pulse as it moves closer to each slick body on the electric floor, to the one you will leave this world with tonight, with your hands locked tight, pressing each other's calloused palms, your glassy eyes looking forward to the next time you raise them like a glass, clutched in the grace of everything that the body waits to release when it releases itself from its tenuous grip of hands in the act. And doesn't your Orlando always resemble the heart? Restless, resilient, eager to demonstrate how it is one with the divine, how it yearns to live from within its own pulse. And now I am pondering the woman who sat next to me, our pulses quickening on my porch steps before we kissed, then shuffled our wild hearts back into the deck to hide in the shadows of the one true thing that I know I have been waiting to discover with another. And now all the pulverized bar glasses resemble diamonds on the dance floor, and a pair of smeared sunglasses sleeps in the massacre's aftermath, inside and outside Pulse. Orlando, the world will wake Sunday morning with news of your hearts murdered. And in the 5th stanza, I've dropped a line in shock. My hands go cold with grief. I don't know if I can spare the time to wait for the one who could be the one, while everyone in Orlando is one heartbeat away from shattering like blown glass floats that hands once held precious, waiting for love to pulse. Yes, pulse. And still I have them. You know, it's a poem I never ever wanted to have to write. Truly never ever wanted to have to write. Well, this is a poem that was published in a certain ABQ in print. Thank you very much to our beloved Hilda and Lynn Miller. I have to give credit to the poet Susan Rich, who gave us an amazing prompt, which was of a painting, well, different images by the artists, the Mexican surrealists, and this triad happened to be Remedios Varo and Leonora Carrington and Katie Horna. So if you go on and look at this image, it's an image of Remedios Varo with a mask on, and it's a very, very striking photograph. So this is called Untitled, After Untitled, Remedios Varo Wearing a Mask by Leonora Carrington by Katie Horna, 1962. Never has a mask fit my face so well, mi cara. Born between brothers, I could never inherit my singular skin. In my drowsy glass eyes, my mother always saw my sisters closing on their way to forever sleep. Imagine being an exquisite corpse before you were born. Your whole life rivaled a two-headed beast or darling, but never miracle. Just a replica, a reflection in flesh tones, a something else living for her to remain, mourn. I hide somewhere in my paintings, Mikala. Untitled, I am one lost shoe of a pair. Who was named in my honor? I've never owned my face. I guess we'll never know. Well, I in the interest of time and not being so heavy, I have a book. I have another Sistina in the book. The poet Carolyn Wright so deftly told me, "Do you know you have 4 Sistinas in your book?" And I actually hadn't realized it. If you're interested in Sistinas, there are 4, and the one I'm just going to draw some attention to, but I don't think I'm going to read it. I think I'm going to move along. Is a poem for Rachel Corey, who was killed in Rafah, and it also has reference to a dear mentor of mine back when I first started my job in Evergreen. Well, maybe I'll read it. I'm telling this story anyway. So, the only thing I'll tell you about this poem now that I'm going to read it is, folks know who Bobby Sands is, right, from Belfast. And so this has a reference to Bobby Sands and also his sister, who the man I referenced in this poem is like deeply in love with. So this is called Let No One Stand Alone. And Rachel, posthumously, her parents published a book of her memoir called Let Me Stand Alone, which was something that she had written in her journal that her parents had found. And Adrian Rich blurbed the book. And it was a little controversial to call it Let No One Stand Alone, or to let me stand alone, because Rachel didn't think of herself as being this lone wolf, even though in that moment that you'll hear about here in the poem, she was standing alone, but she really saw herself as being in community and solidarity. So my title wanted to kind of bring back that image of that. So this is Let No One Stand Alone for Rachel Corey, 1979. 2003. The day I reconnected with evil again, driving south on I-5 to escape my own mini series of headlines in Bellingham. The news from Rafa broke, horrific, like all history emerging, that she had died, clutching fistfuls of dirt that day where she stood her ground alone. Bulldozer and American college girl, a standoff, March 16th, 2003, and NPR reporting that evil had prevailed in not so many spoken words. Outside of Everett, I clutched the steering wheel and the story's every word harder than a car owner should, my knuckles turning whiter than history recorded. Each mile driven, bringing news of worse news as Western Washington blurred by. A Caterpillar D9R, now news, conflicting reports, as the bulldozer operator keeps standing by his story that he never saw her. Like all of history, buried, a corpse shouldering its dirty shot glasses of evil. Like everything that history swallows and disowns to keep its truth underground, soiled. All these clutch plays for convenient blindness, the way a small girl might clutch a stolen chocolate bar in her not so naive fist. The news that Sunday afternoon, so disorienting that I couldn't own it over all these years. And for days after, everyone I knew stood shell-shocked on the campus bricks, mourning that something so evil could befall an Olympia family community in spring. We became history unforgettable, tethered in those distorted budding days. And history would repeat weeks later when a friend, originally from Belfast, clutched his chair's armrests like the sides of a lifeboat to survive evil's swells just hours after speaking at her memorial, trying to keep the 1980s news from Belfast at bay so as not to confuse everything he stood for from everything crumbling beneath Rachel's own sure feet. But he couldn't distinguish his own grief over losing Bobby Sand's sister, whom he loved, from this new history still fresh in his mind like butchered meat. He couldn't stand anything now resembling the girlish present. And clutching his mug handle, I witnessed a man unraveled by more than news. While we drank strong Irish tea, his heart having been evil's good next door neighbor for far too long. He stood up, alone, clutching his own singular history, weeping, wishing like me that Rachel had made her story farther away from the news and from that man-made blade of evil. Thank you, thank you. All right, we're starting to wind down. So I like to, yeah, so it's like three more probably. We'll see. I always like to do a book from my first book, Boats for Women, a poem from my first book, Boats for Women, because the poet Edward O'Dwyer, who lives in Limerick, is my salmon brother, and was the one that was kind of responsible for me even being able to publish my book. As we were talking about earlier today, if you're not aware, my first debut collection, Boats for Women, was my PhD dissertation with Hilda Raz that I finished in 1998. It was published in 2019. Okay, you can do the math. I wouldn't change anything. But I like to tell people, because all this poetry stuff can be really like a mind game, and it can be discouraging. And so the thing that I feel like I hope I do best is just to encourage and remind people we're all on our own clock. And just to keep writing, just keep writing. That's all we need to do. And let's try not to worry about what we think other people think we should be doing. Because, right? So this is the title poem, Boats for Women. I'm just going to take a little sip of water. Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening. Hi, Hilda. Boats for women. Yes, the boat sank. Yes, it broke in two like a stereotypical heart until 70 years later, technology caught up and looked its ancestor in the face. Yes is the way the years oxidize the steel, and yes wipes the name Titanic off the bow. Yes are the lifeboats, the davits, the call for women and children first. Yes are the men who cry from the decks. Sometimes when I kiss her, I am leaving a yes on her lips to know I will go down with this ship. Sometimes when she whispers yes, we are staying on board. But there is always room in the lifeboats for two more. Yes is the fact that if we were alive on that night, we would have lived. Thank you. So I'm also getting into the habit on the Unbreakable Tour, which is really fun to have a name for what you're doing. Silly, but it's fun. Of reading a new poem, like, you know, a really new poem. Like this is a really new poem, like last week new. So I've been thinking a lot about you'll hear about it in the title poem to the Glass Studio in a moment. So I'm kind of doing this a little out of order, but a lot about legacy and a lot of also where do poems come from and you know, what happens when we speak our truth. And I think it's been on my mind a lot, and I think that that's where this poem is coming from, although it's so new that I'm not entirely sure. But here it is. It's called How It Begins, and a really uncanny thing happened. And I'm starting to learn at 60 years old that the uncanny is the everyday. So just get over yourself, Sandy, and accept that. So I on Monday of this past week, I took a workshop with Marie Howe, poet Marie Howe, who many years ago I'd studied with in her apartment in Cambridge for 10 weeks. Her book, The Good Thief, had just come out. Like What the Living Do, it wasn't out yet. She wasn't who she was going to become, the miraculous poet that she is and that we all love. But we were just sitting there in Cambridge and thing. And so I decided to gift myself this workshop. And 2 days before I wrote this poem 2 days before I was in the room with her. And the first question that the moderator asks her is, oh, tell us a little bit about where poems begin. And she says, oh, in the middle, you know, just you always need to start in the middle of things. And then she starts talking about an amazing poem by Elizabeth Bishop called The Fish. Well, this poem that I had written 2 days before begins with what she started about saying them in the middle and ends with a reference to Elizabeth Bishop's The Fish. So you can imagine my absolute shock. My jaw drops. Marie Howe. It's just like 20 years ago. Okay, I guess I listened to something. Thank you, Marie. And thank you, Marie. So this is called How It Begins. From the middle of where we do not know, and yesterday's relentless rain, the downpour has ceased to matter, recedes like our hard-earned years we told ourselves to carry and not spill. Secrets, so many secrets in that battered, overgrown aluminum tin bucket. Now we are breathing in the lyrical, maybe even smiling as we wave goodbye, goodbye to our transgressions, to some of the people we've unknown and loved, to most of the things that have held us back. We've arrived, a bit early for our tastes, at this place we'd always imagined but never dared to dream. Like a swaying, blinking signal light in bluster, a maybe between yes and no. Yes, this is the place we now inhabit, where arias come curled inside cloudbursts, ether, a breeze that rustles through our hair, like leaves inhabiting their veins. Appreciating the differences between states of matter, liquid, solid, gas. I've lived my whole life trying to be just one, likely told I was likely told I should prefer to be solid. But now, today, in this moment, at this juncture, from this vantage point, standing on the ferry between the surety of the past and the ever-present, between the knowledge of worlds swelling, then softening, then crescendoing again, suddenly, in this moment of self-appointed sleuth, I change tunes forever. Forgive myself. Let the myth of solid lap over the rim of that long-gripped bucket. Let water be water for once, for the first time. Let water be the liquid it was forever aiming to be. Let every yearning be a lesson in forgiveness. Let every bird arrive and depart from where I do not know. A gesture of light that becomes gas, becoming a swallow of what we've never known into a taste of who we've always been. And suddenly, in the midst of suddenly, everything turns rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. And we are the poem, and we let the sky go. Thank you. Okay. Yep, okay. So two more. Are you okay with two more?
Yeah.
Okay, two more. So yep, okay. We're gonna do the title poem to the Glass Studio. And then we're just gonna end on something fun, I guess. Yeah, maybe. We'll see how fun it is to go back in time. So what do I need to tell you about the Glass Studio? I'm not gonna say anything. It's a little longer narrative poem, and yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. This is the Glass Studio, and it's the original title poem. There are 3 more. So if you are curious about the flavor of the other 3, you can purchase our book, purchase Mary's book, and all that jazz. You know the deal here. The Glass Studio. I must go back to that photograph of me, 14, on an early morning in my father's makeshift sweatshop, on the unfinished second floor of my grandparents' house, leaning over beige glass squares arranged in a plaster poured mold, my Red Sox cap cocked backwards like a trigger waiting for release. My left hand steadying the burning soldering iron while I push coiled snakes of lead into the iron's hot tip to melt them into quick silver seams, fusing those cut glass squares into translucently beautiful panes if I hold them up to the light, breaking through the second floor window. I sweat through this labor. I breathe in the noxious fumes. I wear no protective mask. My hot pink lungs slow burn towards death. Hour after hour, I run my hands like this, iron and lead, like over the seams of women's bodies it will take years for me to touch. I use the same precision to bring them full circle to where they become translucent. My father will teach me all this with squares of cut glass, not ever saying the word sex, without ever claiming to transfer the knowledge of how he broke my mother's body to create something sacred akin to a family. Downstairs, my grandfather returns from hours emptying glasses filled with Kentucky bourbon and ice, brings home his daily ragings like newspaper headlines, and breaks everything on the first floor. I sit up here on a metal stool in the Glass Studio, mute like a bird who has lost faith in song, soldering everything at my fingertips back into place faster than he can break. My grandmother burns her hand occasionally on the coils of the stove while she makes his lunch. At the height of these humid summer afternoons, my father disappears before my grandfather returns home. He teaches me not to press the iron against any glass square in the mold for too long. He shows me how the iron-willed iron desires nothing in its intention to burn. So if left resting on the glass's skin, it will provoke an irrevocable wound. After hours inside of this sweat and burn, heat from the tip of the iron threatening to welt my skin with each beaded line, the fumes filling my lungs like my grandfather's cigarette smoke overtakes the living room where my grandparents sit in separate chairs after all his sodden threats and direct hits. I close up the studio, pushing the windows down hard and drawing the curtains like stitches, turn off my iron, brush its tip in flux until it smokes clean. I whip down the stairs, where on the other side of the wall, my grandparents smolder in today's aftermath of broken glass. I pull the door tight to keep them inside, the brass doorknob hot in my palm. I run next door, up the stairs to my bedroom, strip my leadened clothes, my skin now, a mix of sweat from labor and labored fear, and I pull on my bathing suit, ride my bike hard and fast away to the beach, lay down on the hot sand next to the beautiful girls on their striped towels, on their backs, tanning themselves into womanhood, their new breasts coming in like delicate blown glass floats adrift in the sea and landing on the creamy skin of the shore, miraculously whole, like art, like the women who've broken away from me, like the glass-infused light leaves the hanging stained glass lamps I assemble through my teens in the illegal glass studio of my family's naive making. All right, my last poem. Thank you so much for listening. I was born in 1964, which means I'm 60 years old this year. And it also means that I was a perfect age when a particular show called The Partridge Family came out. This is not the original lunchbox I had as a teen or as a preteen, but it is my travel lunchbox. Okay. Would you care to hold it during the reading? Thank you. Okay, well, you can pass it around. You can pass it around if people are jealous. I don't want to cause okay. So I was at a workshop a couple years ago with these amazing poets, Susan Richen, Kelly Russell Agaton, and they had a prompt, and the prompt was write a letter to someone that you admire. Didn't have to be a famous person. It could have been my grandmother. It could have been my father. It could have been my cat. It could have, but I decided I do a lot of flipping in my life. I decided to flip the prompt and have someone famous write a letter to me. So this poem, and it's in a broadside that's available, a beautiful broadside made by Ray Zill, hand set, and there's only 25 of these that exist in the world. That's the run. They're all signed and printed. I'm going to be reading from the broadside. David Cassidy writes me a fan letter from the great painted bus beyond, because he's passed on. From the pages of all those Tiger Beat magazines you purchased with your allowance, I became more like sugar with each poster you pulled from the centerfold staples. I never liked that my crotch was always pinned to the crease, that girls tugged at my sleeves, ripped off my clothes, and shredded what was left of me at my concerts. I was hoping to be a firefly that feasted on night flowers, leaving my scent behind with my original songs, the ones no one heard over the din of those pop hits that ABC's money mogul shoveled into my mouth. During boxed lunches on the set, I had to sign thousands of postcards to girls I'd never met. I was drowning, Sandy, in the fountain of teen idol fame, and I didn't know how to swim. Who does in that kind of water? So I vanished into those cheap newsprint pages of 16 magazine. I became a paper ghost, and only the drugs and sex let me know that I was alive. What can I say? Why am I risking this from the great painted bus beyond to share with you. I think you know better than the lyrics to I Think I Love You. Every poem is a spotlight that shines the light back into your eyes. You need to keep them open to honest desires. Don't get caught beneath the undertow of the trapdoor's weight. Come on, you know how to be happy, to escape. You almost do it every day, except you act like it's your shadow side. You never let yourself fully embrace the miracle of you. I sang all those songs on those albums that I know you still sing when you are alone or driving with your sister in her van. I know you gave a private concert to Tara Hardy in your living room, that you have 2 microphones at the ready to practice when you feel inspired by songs you wore down the needles in your preteen bedroom to hear over and over. I wasn't ready for everything that came next after the gold records and the show's opening credits dressed in mod. I should have shaken off that Partridge Family tree sooner. But this isn't my ending, Sandy. This is your beginning. So come on, stay happy. Swallow my songs, my prayers for that girl long ago who loved me as no one could. You retire all those faded fan magazines. You know you are happy when you are unlocked, unleashed from inside the glass house where you've been waiting your whole ludicrous life to see.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks to Jules and John. Thank you, Mary Oishi. Thank you, Hilda Raz.
That's a great ending. Bye.
Bye. Bye.